listening to Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit on Ragebreed Radio.
Welcome to Ragebreed, Mind, Body, and Spirit, the podcast that dives into the connection between mental strength, physical health, and spiritual growth. In this series, we'll explore how to thrive as individuals, creatively, professionally, and personally, while building resilience in a world that often tests us. Ragebreed has always been about more than just music. It's about empowerment, authenticity, and community. And this podcast is here to remind you that no matter what challenges you face, you already have the tools within you to nurture your mind, strengthen your body, and uplift your spirit.
So the first chapter of Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit, we're going to be looking at the power of vibes. Okay, so basically vibes is something that I produce for my life coaching. And in this episode, it's going to be the space where creativity, spirituality and empowerment come together. As you may know, I'm your host, Karina Sher, and we're going to be exploring balance, healing and the vibes method, which is my own framework for creating a life filled with clarity, strength and purpose. When I first founded Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit, I wanted it to be more than just a brand. I wanted it to be a sanctuary for people who live in chaos but crave calm, for artists or seekers and everyday warriors that carry pain but also carry potential. And the philosophy is simple: balance the mind, strengthen the body, and feed the spirit. Because when these three align, life feels less like a battlefield and more like a life path moving forward. So now we're going to talk about the importance of alignment. Okay, so too often we focus on one part of ourselves and neglect the rest. And certainly if you're somebody who's a kind of all or nothing person like myself, sometimes you can be feeding your mind with knowledge, but your body is tired. You may feel really exhausted and your spirit feels quite numb. Or maybe you're chasing physical health, but mentally you're carrying unprocessed pain, okay? Now, alignment doesn't mean perfection, but it means giving each part of you the space and care it needs. And certainly with me running Ragebreed, I do quite a lot with it. You know, I've got a full-time job now, and making sure that I've got time for rest, making sure I've got time for exercise, making sure I have time to unwind and do some, chakra meditation, for example, or yoga, something that is going to de-stress and, really take out all the negative from your body. Because if you're around very hostile environments, and especially when you're dealing with the public, and especially being a public person that is very open, you're always going to be prone to judgment. So, you're always carrying the weight of other people's opinions, if that makes sense. So that's why it's important to do chakra meditations. So if you're on social media quite a lot, balance it out. I mean, we do a 15-minute chakra meditation, which you can find on Ragebreed TV. We'll put it in today's show as well. And that could hopefully help you, find a way to sort of clear the negativity from your chakras, unload all the weight coming from other people's energies, and it's a really good way to create and visualize that kind of negative energy, releasing from your body. It's a very powerful technique to use, and it really helps with your subconscious brain, which is very important because actually all your traumas and things like that are actually stored in your subconscious, and triggers is what makes it open up into the front. So this is a really powerful technique, guided meditation, chakra cleansing, that kind of thing. Even if you didn't want to try our version of the 15-minute chakra cleanse, you can go on many YouTube sites where they do plenty of that kind of stuff. All you have to do is research guided meditation, but it's an absolute game changer, because after a hard day's work, or maybe you want to stop thinking about something stressful, go into this zone of peace, find yourself as a safe place where you can totally be at peace, and then make sure that you're comfortable, and then just literally let your mind wander when you're doing your chakra guided meditation, and you will feel so much more at peace afterwards. It's a very good tool to help, because as you all know, stress is a huge killer for a lot of people. Blood pressure can go high, you can get heart attacks and things like that. So important, really, really important to stop overthinking, take some time out to yourself, and maybe do, a guided meditation.
Now let's talk about the body. Often we push it to the limits, forgetting it's the vessel that carries everything we want to achieve. Looking after your body isn't about perfection, it's about energy, vitality, and respect for yourself. Eating well doesn't mean restriction. It means fueling yourself to feel strong. If you are not doing very active jobs or have diabetes, for example, low GI meals will balance energy without the crash. Even simple swaps, like hydrating properly or choosing nutrient-rich snacks, make a massive difference. This does not mean you cannot enjoy a guilt-free snack or meal, but balance it with not eating as much the next day. That is what we call balance, and not letting it affect mental health. Movement is just as important. For some, that's the gym or yoga. It can be walking, dancing, or even headbanging at a gig. What matters is that your body feels alive and connected. When the body is strong, the mind is sharper, and the spirit feels freer.
Food is fuel, but it's also joy. I believe in nourishing meals that give you energy, but I also believe in guilt-free snacks and treats. Because life is about balance, not extremes. Having a piece of chocolate cake, a takeaway pizza, or your favorite comfort food doesn't undo the progress you've made. It's part of living fully. The key is moderation. Think of it as the 80-20 principle. 80% of the time, focus on whole foods, lean proteins, vegetables, fruits, and meals that energize you. The other 20%? Enjoy it. Guilt-free. Because a healthy lifestyle is one you can actually maintain. Technology can also be a great ally. Apps like MyFitnessPal, Lose It, or Chronometer allow you to log meals, track calories and nutrients, and see patterns in your diet.
For some, it's eye-opening to realize how much sugar or sodium sneaks into daily meals. For others, it's a motivator to hit protein goals or stay on track with portion sizes. But here's the most important thing: don't let tracking become obsessive. Use it as a tool for awareness, not self-punishment. Food should empower you, not control you. When we combine balance with awareness, we create a lifestyle where our body feels strong, our energy stays consistent, and we can still enjoy life's pleasures without guilt.
And quite honestly, it's very important to also realize that stress can really affect cortisol levels as well. And some people that are overweight usually have hormonal conditions, and one of them is PCOS. So it's important for people to realize that it's not just about the food intake, it's about your hormones and how it processes food. Some people have underactive thyroid, for example, and your thyroid will affect the way it metabolizes food. If you have, for example, diabetes, it's not providing enough insulin, so that is why some people suffer with weight gain who have diabetes, for example. Certainly with food, it is one of life's biggest pleasures, and it's also used sometimes as a tool of emotional eating. So when you've had a bad day at work, I don't know if you've done this, but sometimes you can use food as a comfort as opposed to a fuel. And this is why we all talk about comfort eating, and this is one of the main reasons why a lot of people do this. It's the same reason why people maybe binge drinking, and maybe the same reason why people go to sort of the drugs side of things. It all comes from stress, and maybe it comes from a bit of depression, and maybe you're going through a rough time. So a lot of people go to these things as soothers. That's what it is. I call them sort of like, they're kind of like self-soothers, but they're not necessarily good for you. And you find that a lot of people in rock and metal music, and especially even in normal life, a lot of people use these things like food, drugs, alcohol, to help them cope with difficult things. But the trick is not necessarily using those things to help you in those situations. It's finding something that can help you, which is healthier. So things like guided meditation, things like having sort of like a snack cupboard, which is maybe of treats that are under a certain amount of calories, or maybe if you're on a low GI diet, finding a cupboard or maybe the fridge where you've got sort of like, when you have those situations that happen where you need to feel that you want something sweet or something like that, you can maybe get some sugar-free options. So one of the things that I usually have is a sugar-free jelly. I think it's like a 10 cal jelly through Hartley's or something. And I have like little brunch bars, for example, that are under 100 calories and low GI. So there's ways that you can have some of your favorite foods, but maybe basically the calorie content or the sugar content or the fat content is lower. So, I mean, there's a lot of options these days that you can use. And they're just as tasty, some of them, so you can actually still, enjoy those certain things. And, and that way you've kind of covered yourself, if that makes sense. And that's a beneficial way to do it. But ultimately, it's finding a healthier way to handle stress. So things like, going to the gym, swimming, yoga, watching a movie, something, maybe taking a hot bath. These are all self-soothing techniques to help cope with stress, and they're better for you than maybe, going out, getting drunk and things like that. So these are some of the techniques that you can use.
Pain and stress are two things we all face, and often, they feed into one another. Stress can make pain feel worse, and chronic pain can create more stress. It's a cycle that can feel impossible to break. The first step is awareness. Ask yourself, what's happening in my body right now? Am I tense, grinding my teeth, holding my shoulders up without realizing it? Sometimes simply noticing tension allows us to release it. For stress management, tools like breathing exercises, mindfulness meditation, and even short breaks during the day can work wonders. Just 5 minutes of deep breathing, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and pause for 4, can reset your nervous system. When it comes to physical pain, gentle movement is often better than total rest. Activities like yoga, stretching, or even slow walking can ease stiffness. For some, practices like progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense and then relax each muscle group, can reduce both pain and anxiety.
Another powerful tool is journaling. Writing down what's stressing you, or noting when pain flares up, can help you spot triggers and patterns. Maybe stress spikes after certain interactions, or pain worsens with lack of sleep. Awareness gives you the power to make changes. And never underestimate the power of self-compassion. Too often, we push through pain and stress, blaming ourselves for not being stronger. But giving yourself permission to rest, reset, and heal is not weakness, it's wisdom. Pain and stress may be part of life, but they don't have to control it. With awareness, gentle practices, and self-kindness, you can reduce their power and reclaim balance.
Hi there, it's Karina from Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit. And today we're going to be doing a 10-minute meditation. So one of the things that you need before we begin is I want to make sure that you're in a comfortable position, that no one's going to disturb you for the next 10 minutes. You need to block out everything that's currently going on in your life, the things that you are overstressing about, let it all go. And I want you to sit in a position that feels comfortable and natural to you. So what we're going to do is begin with taking a few deep breaths. So I want you to breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. And I want you to do this 2 or 3 times until you're beginning to get a natural flow of your body. And I want you to think about your breath as and when you're doing this. So when you breathe in for 5, breathe out for 5. So I want you to do that 2 more times now with me. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay, so now we're in a position where we are in a state of we're in touch with our bodies now. So what I would like you to do is to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine the soles of your feet, and I want you to imagine that there are roots growing from your feet going straight into the earth, and it's going right through into the earth, right down deep into the earth's core. And I want you to imagine some clear crystals, and imagine these crystals are full of light energy, cleansing, healing energy. And I want you to imagine that these roots are wrapping themselves around the crystals. And for every breath that you inhale, I want you to imagine that that white, bright energy and light is coming through those roots up into the soles of your feet and into your whole body as you breathe in. And then when you breathe out, I want you to imagine that all the negativity and all the stress and all the problems are literally being sent out into the universe for the universe to handle it and to deplete it and take it somewhere else away from you. So what I want you to do is now close your eyes. I want you to take a deep breath in. I want you to imagine that lovely light energy filling up. Breathe out, and I want you to imagine that all that negative energy is going out with you. So that's one of the things I want you to repeat. Do it again. And all the negative energy is being released. And I want you to do that 2 or 3 more times. So we're going to do that together. So breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And just imagine your whole light, your whole light in your body just shining up and getting rid of all that negativity in your body that's being stored up. Breathe in. And breathe out, and imagine all that negativity is now leaving your body, and you're just left with this beautiful light white energy that is healing any place in your organs, in your chakra, that is trying to heal your body. And just enjoy the feeling of creative visualization, and just enjoy the feeling of that white light energy going through your chakras. So as you breathe in again, I want you to imagine that that white light is circling your chakra, your root chakra, and it's getting rid of all the energy, all the negative energy, and it's replacing it with positive light energy. And same again, your sacral chakra, breathe in. Imagine that light going there, and then breathe out all the negative energy out. Breathe in again. And I want you to imagine that there's a long line of chakras in your body. So you've got your sacral chakra, your heart chakra, your throat chakra, your third eye chakra, and your crown chakra. So for each chakra, we're going to imagine that this white light is going to come through, cleanse that energy, and then we're going to breathe out the negative, so our body's completely detoxed through good light energy. So let's go back into our breathing. So we're breathing in that lovely white light energy. Breathe out the negative. And then we're imagining all that negative stuff in your stomach chakra. Let's do it again. Getting rid of all the crap in there, just imagine all of it all going. And then let's go now to your heart chakra. Now, usually the heart chakra is the chakra which needs the most healing, because we go through quite a lot of difficult stuff in life. So, I want you to open your heart to this beautiful white light healing, and imagine this healing going through into your heart chakra. Breathe in, breathe out, and imagine that beautiful white light energy, swirling in that chakra and healing all the broken bits. Imagine breathing again and breathe out. Now do your throat chakra. So this is about voicing, I speak, it stands for. So it's about voicing your needs and wants. So this is something very important if you're sort of low confident and you're not very good at speaking to people. So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Okay, so we're doing this chakra, and imagine all that negative stuff's going out, all the self-doubt is going out, so you're able to speak your true authenticity in your voice. Then we're going to go to our third eye chakra, and the third eye chakra, I want you to imagine that this beautiful white light energy is going through the roots, through all your chakras, right up to your third eye. So breathe in and breathe out, and do that once more. Breathe in and breathe out. And then what I want you to do is imagine that you've got a chakra on top of your head. This is called the crown chakra, and this is the receiver of external, energy and stuff. So what I want you to do is breathe in and breathe out, and imagine that beautiful white light energy going through your body, through your chakras, through every single chakra. And then now on your crown chakra, you're going to breathe that light energy in, wash all the negativity away, breathe out, and we're going to do that once more. Breathe in and breathe out. And then what I want you to do is imagine now gold droplets of rain all around you, and I want you to imagine this energy, and it's beautiful light energy that's protecting you. It's swirling all around you, and it's cleansing you of any feelings of guilt, of remorse, of it's about self-forgiveness, and it's about forgiving others. So I want you to imagine this beautiful golden rain energy going through your body, washing away your fears, and just imagine your whole body just floating. And I just want you to just breathe in that beautiful feeling of complete peace and serenity. And breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And now you are fully relaxed, and I want you to shake off your hands, any excess energy, and now your chakras are cleared for the day.
Karina has written this statement about spirituality. The spirit is about connection with yourself, with others, and with something bigger. Spirituality doesn't have to mean religion. It can mean meditation, mindfulness, or simply losing yourself in music or art. For me, writing songs, painting, and creating events has always been deeply spiritual, because it connects me with who I am at my core. I believe healing starts when we give ourselves permission to be authentic. That means embracing who you are, the core of who you are, your scars, your passions, and your uniqueness. When I felt isolated, I found strength by turning inward, connecting with creativity, and remembering that resilience comes from honoring your spirit. One thing I love about Ragebreed is that it's not just my story, it's ours. It's about building a community where people can be themselves without fear of judgment. That's why mind, body and spirit fits so perfectly into Ragebreed. Because it's not about being flawless, it's about supporting one another through the highs and the lows. We've all faced struggles. We've all been underestimated, criticized, or doubted. But when we share our stories, we remind each other that we're not alone, and that's where real empowerment begins.
Well, I'm Dan Cross. I've posted stuff in Ragebreed before. You've probably seen some of my posts. I'm here today actually talking about mental health and promoting positive mental health, actually, and how we should all do it and all look out for each other and support each other, really. I have my own mental health issues. Sometimes it's difficult, getting out of bed in the morning, and sometimes you just want to close up and not talk to anybody, and it's just easy to get into that stage, and sometimes it just gets worse and worse, and and sometimes it's like I said, people say reach out, and sometimes it's even hard to reach out, but so what I'm saying as well is, if you see someone struggling, you think someone's struggling, you reach out to them and make sure that they're okay, and even if it's just talking, talking about bands, anything like that, going for a beer or something, just make sure everyone's okay, because we've lost a lot of people with mental health over many times, especially in the metal community as well. A lot of people have gone over the last few years, by their own hands, from their own mental health, and it's something we need to sort of be on top of, make sure everyone's listened to, and be there for each other, really, and make sure that everyone knows that they're not alone in this world, and they have got someone there to listen to them and be a listening voice. For now, look out for yourself and look out for each other, we're all in this together.
Why communication is important. Hi, my name's Karina, and you know me as the owner of Ragebreed. I also am a life coach, and I'm here today to talk to you about mind, body, and spirit. But today's episode is going to be focusing mainly on communication. Now, people in general are very social animals. We need to interact with each other, but we all need to be a safe space, and that can be difficult when we have different challenges or thoughts or opinions, some which will be positive and some will be negative. But the truth of everything is that you have a voice, and in order to have that voice, we also need to have respect. And what that means is that we will be able to communicate in such a way to the other person whereby it is a respectful contact. So regardless of whether it's good or bad, we're able to speak to each other with respect, no matter how angry or upset or frustrated you are. And that is the key to building successful relationships. It doesn't mean that sometimes we won't get mad. It doesn't mean that sometimes we won't behave erratically. But it's also understanding that truly great bonds are the ones that can surpass anything. And it means that you have to care enough about that person in order to communicate properly, in order to find resolve. There's no way of them actually being able to communicate in such a way whereby to say, I'm not happy with this situation, or there's certain things that are bothering me at the moment. I just need some clarification on something, am I wrong in thinking this? And it's through how you word things is how you're going to get to your destination. Now, some people will, they'll punish you from just a perception or a thought or an idea, and it can be people that are paranoid, or there's been rumours spread about you, for example, and they won't talk to you directly about it, but what will then happen is sometimes they will start this whole excessive paranoia, and that excessive paranoia grows, and then there's people backbiting about you, and it becomes larger and larger, and the other person they know there's something wrong, but they're unaware, and even if they're asking those people aren't able to communicate properly with them. Sometimes that can be for a number of reasons. It can be down to simple reasons that they don't want to resolve. So that can be for a few different reasons. It can be down to jealousy. It can be down to there's a lot of prejudices as well when it comes to people. And we have to remember that in life, people do hold judgments about others, whether it's class prejudices, whether it's, you're a woman, sexism, for example, whether it's racism. It could be a combination of different things. And sometimes it's just pure jealousy. And unfortunately, because of that, it is one of the biggest destroyers of friendships and relationships, because they're constantly competing with you. And that's what shouldn't happen. Friends should be rooting for each other and be happy for each other's successes. That is what friendship is about. That's about caring for the other person, and that is how you grow. But it is through communication, good communication, to understand the other person's perspective. And that is how you grow.
Vibes, Karina Sher Method. Karina Sher is a certified life coach, and she has accomplished many goals. Despite health conditions or smear campaigns, she operates with the view of the right timing, adapting where external factors get thrown in the mix but ensuring the goals get done. Check out her Vibes method. V is for visualizing your goal. I is for investing time to plan. B is for baby steps to build the goal. E is for executing the baby steps like climbing a ladder to your goal. S is for self-motivation and success. Using her Vibes method and SMART goals, she has managed to achieve a multiple of accomplishments, whether it meant finishing courses, completing a goal for charity like swimming 22 miles for Diabetes UK, whether that has been playing top venues and plugging her bands around the world, whether it has been relaunching Ragebreed Radio. No matter what tries to bring her down, she still comes out the other side stronger than ever.
If you want to book Karina Sher for life coaching sessions to change mindset and get to your goals, go to www.ragebreed.bigcartel.com to purchase a session and organize a time to suit. Karina can only do online sessions or phone calls evenings and weekends GMT time.
What is fight or flight? Phobias discussed on Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit. Hi there, it's Karina from Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about phobias and the fight or flight response. So, have you ever been in a situation whereby, you've been in a situation where it's been really frightening? And it could be a person, it could be a situation, it could be, something that you were afraid of, like spiders, or maybe it's just something, that has been really, really traumatizing for you. So, for example, a lot of us get fight or flight responses when something like a trauma has happened, and this is what we call PTSD. And what actually happens is we have something called the fight or flight response, and it's also known as the acute stress response. And what it refers to is a physiological reaction which occurs when we are in the presence of something that is mentally or physically terrifying. So what happens is that your body goes into this sort of intense fear reaction, and what happens is the nervous system is activated by a sudden release of hormones. Okay, and the sympathetic nervous system, it stimulates the adrenal glands, and that triggers the release of catecholamines and adrenaline and non-adrenaline as well. So the chain reactions actually result in an increase in heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, and it takes about roughly 20 to 60 minutes for the body to return to its, normal homeostasis, I suppose. So when you face something frightening, you might feel your heartbeat quicken, you might start breathing faster, and this is called hyperventilation. it might not be as severe as that, but it could go into that, and that's what we call a panic attack, where your heart races and it can actually feel like you're dying sometimes, and your entire body goes tense, and it's in this sort of ready to take action. You sometimes get dilated pupils, you can tremble, you may get pale or flushed skin, and there's different ways that your body does respond. When you're having a panic attack or you're going through anxiety, for example, and it happens when we're dealing with a lot of stress in our lives or danger in our environment. So when we feel like we're under threat, for example, the responses in your body is geared up to go into this either fight or flight. And it can be triggered by real, but it can also be triggered by imaginary threats. So sometimes what happens is, you can actually get afraid of something, which is not actually true. So for example, I don't know, phobias are a good example of how the fight and flight response might be falsely triggered, in the face of a perceived threat, for example. So say, for example, a person who's terrified of heights, they may experience, like sort of a very acute stress response if they have to go on the top floor of, say, a big building, for example, to attend a meeting. The body might go into high alert, heartbeat might start to increase, and as I said before, some people are so afraid that it can lead to a panic attack. And what can actually happen is sometimes is that we fear things where we feel like we're in danger, and that is your body going to this natural fight or flight. But when you've been traumatized, and sometimes this actually happens with love, and I know it sounds bizarre, but when you've been burned by love before, and say you put all your emotion and heart into something, and then all of a sudden that person betrays your trust, and it can be very traumatizing, and it can sort of really kind of create a trauma where you're replaying what happened over and over again, and you're responding to that feeling again and again, and you're constantly trying to fix it, and and what that does is, when you're stuck in the cycle of your past, that anyone new who you meet, for example, that starts saying all these loving things to you, your body is still traumatized, so it's thinking, this burned me before, this love business burned me, so it goes into this kind of fight or flight response where you sabotage somebody that might actually be good for you and wants longevity, but because you've been burned by love before, you're doing the fight or flight response, whereby you will fight that person or you'll flee. And it happens because you're afraid of getting close to that person, because your body is naturally bringing anxiety to the surface in your subconscious and giving you physical problems, because you're nervous around that person and you're afraid of that person because you're experiencing feelings that before ended up going wrong. And so I've gone through this myself, and a lot of it is down to trust, and trust is risk, because people are capable of making mistakes. But by knowing that, and by accepting that a relationship is not going to be perfect all the way through, and that things could go wrong, once you understand that that's what a real relationship is, things do go wrong, and then you fix it, or you go through bad phases, or and this will happen. But as long as you have got a way to communicate with each other and be completely honest about your feelings, and explain that you're afraid and these are the reasons why, and a lot of it is about building trust. So for example, if there's somebody that you're really you're feeling nervous and all this kind of stuff, and you just need to have an avenue of conversation of the things that you expect in a relationship, of the things that you want in a relationship, you know, whether it's a logical thing or whether it's emotional, whether it's physical. When you have a discussion about what your needs are and what your boundaries are to what you will and won't accept, then you're able to create, you know, a bond where both people know the score. If you don't have that conversation, then, you know, or you pretend that you don't care because you're pushing them away, then what happens is that person is seeing that person pushing them away and don't think that you're interested. So they're going to act as if they're single, and they're just going to continue with their life. And if you have got genuine feelings there, when they do eventually move on, that's going to bring you back into that fear zone, because the things that you actually feared the most made it happen by your response of pushing that person away. So it's really important to have that open communication and be better with communication when you, for example, you're trying to hide how you feel, for example. And it's really, really important to be upfront and honest, because if you don't have that truth between two people, or that real, you know, the real feelings of how you truly feel, that person is always going to be pushing you away. There's always going to be self-sabotage going on because you're responding to fear. And, you know, from somebody who has experienced that before, which I have, you know, it takes a while to fix fight or flight symptoms when you've been in a very toxic situation whereby, you know, you're getting close and then they're sabotaging it, and then you're back in square one again. You build up hope and then you get close again and they sabotage it, and then it's like a roller coaster of, you know, there's no commitment, it's the self-sabotage, there's fear, you know, and then there's the lies that go along with it because they're afraid of what people may think. And, you know, and I honestly believe this, that fear is one of the biggest problems that we have when it comes to relationships, because so many people in this life, it's not worked out. And it's not, you know, like, you've got to take the responsibility of what your actions were in the relationship, and that person has to take responsibility of theirs and think, how could have I been a better person to that person? And sometimes you've been the best person you've been to the person, it's just that you just didn't work out, and you have to accept that. You just have to accept that both energies were not compatible. And, you know, and that can be hard for people who have invested a lot of time and effort into relationships. And that's why people get hurt, because they don't want to feel like they've invested all this time, love, energy to someone that can betray their trust. And, you know, that's a perfectly reasonable fear, but it's also important to understand that people are capable of making mistakes. And it's something that I've learned. But the thing is, it doesn't mean to say that you say to that person, well, you know, you're going to make a mistake and I'm just going to, you know, get used to you treating me badly. No, you voice your boundaries, you know, you tell that person what you expect. If you want monogamy, say, I want monogamy, but then you have to practice it as well. You can't expect someone else to give you monogamy and then you know, you can't do it. So it's one of them things that you have to really think about what you truly want. And that can take a long time, because maybe you're not ready for a proper relationship, and it could be that you're just sabotaging the bond because you know that you're not capable of a long-term commitment, because you're distracted by different people all the time. And that's another reason why sometimes you do that, because you're going through a fight or flight symptom, because whenever you get close to someone, you're getting that sort of, oh my God, this person might hurt me. And you're remembering the trauma of what it was like before. But then you're also putting yourself in a situation where you might be missing out on a really loving, mutually loving relationship that will last with time. You know, so it's really important to think about, you know, if you are getting these responses, are they rational responses? Because, for example, if you're not with someone, and you're basically telling them that you don't want to be with them, and then you push them away and you say, I'm not interested in you, and all these things, and then that person says, okay, fine, I'll try and move on, and then that person moves on and it hurts you, then you have to really think about what it is that you actually want. Because if you want that person and you don't want that person to be with anyone else, you can't expect that person to be faithful to you because of your fear at a distance, and that is a classic symptom of PTSD. That's a classic symptom of fight or flight response. And it's something that you have to acknowledge that you're doing, and it's something that you have to really get into the mindset of trying to get rid of that fear, and just saying that even if the worst was to happen, I will get through it, because I'm a strong person and I'm not going to let the actions of other people disturb my inner peace and my, what I feel about myself. And a lot of it is down to the negativity that you say to yourself. So if you're sitting there and saying, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm this, I'm that, if you're saying these things to yourself and thinking that you're not enough, for example, then you create your reality. So it's about changing your mindset, and that can take a bit of work. Believe me, I know. You have to go, I've been through CBT and I've studied counselling, at university, and, there's been situations whereby, people bottle things up and they don't express themselves truthfully. And, and this is the very reason why you don't find solutions to problems, because you're not addressing them, you're running away from them. And that's why people with fight or flight quite often turn to alcohol, and drug addictions and things like that, because they're avoiding pain, they're avoiding the thing that is causing them stress, because what's happened is they've gone through something very difficult in their life, and it can be really hard for them. So, and this is the reason why this happens for people that are going through fight or flight. And the disorder's called PTSD, and it can give you all kinds of different symptoms, and I remember when I was very young and I went through quite a traumatic event, and it was really hard for me. I couldn't watch sex scenes on TV, and I know it sounds weird, but I'd gone through quite a trauma in my teens, and for some reason it just made me feel like I was losing control. I was going to lose everything. My heart was racing. I felt powerless. I felt uncontrollable. I was scared, and I had irrational fear over something that's meant to be a beautiful thing, between two people, but at the time I was so traumatized that I had anxiety, I had panic attacks, I was falling downstairs, and I remember the hyperventilation. I had to use a bag all the time, and it was a horrendous time for me, and little things could trigger it off, and it can be a smell, it can be, and it was full-blown panic attacks at the time, and I was going through anxiety as well, and thankfully now I'm at a place where I've dealt with that trauma, so I can watch sex scenes and I can, be physical to a certain point, because at the moment it's something I'm trying to get better from a past bond as well. So at the moment, when I talk about fight or flight, when you've gone through trauma, it is hard to pick up the pieces afterwards, because emotionally you're scarred because of trust, and it's hard to be able to trust people when you've gone through something so bad. But it's always worth remembering, and this is what I tell other people that are going through this kind of condition, is that not everyone is a cruel person, and not everyone just wants a single life all their life. There are people out there that want longevity. They want to have someone there to love and to spend the rest of their lives with and have children. And I've come from a background where I've had long-term relationships, but then I had a single period because the person that I fell in love with didn't want to be with me. And so you've got to remember that people go through different things in life, and until you're healed from the past, it's hard for you to go forward. So I always recommend healing. It's really important to heal from these wounds, and really think about, when you're having these panic attacks or anxiety attacks and things, and you're afraid, open up to that person and say to them, this is what I'm going through when I'm around you. I find it really hard because I'm afraid that you're going to be with someone else, and that I don't mean anything, that kind of thing. And I can always sense when someone is nervous about someone else is going to try or cheat on them and things like that. I can always sense it. And the thing is, you have a right to feel that way if you're with someone, and the problem is when you fall for someone, and say both people fall for each other, but one of them's afraid to be with that person, but then the feelings are there. So when the other person tries to move on, that person gets hurt, and then there's a cycle of coming back to each other, breaking up, coming back to each other, and there's no stability. And the reason for that is sabotage. It's self-sabotage. It's fear of loving someone and then losing them. So you sabotage it, and then that's it. And that was what kept happening to me. I kept getting close, and then he kept sabotaging it. Then he was saying that he didn't care about the other girls. Coming back to me, we shared a night mutually, and it's this sort of, this fear can be so great that it can open up a whole different can of worms, because you can't explain your behavior, and then because people are questioning you about it, you're afraid, and then you end up saying something stupid, lying about stuff because you're afraid of what people may think, or you're afraid of what would happen if you would be with that person. And so you're constantly on this cycle of sabotage, and and it can happen with so many people. And that's why a lot of guys, and a lot of women even, they don't want love. They say that they don't want it anymore, because after they've been through a bad experience, it's really hard for them to love again. And I'm a great believer that if you truly love someone and you truly want to be with them, but they don't want to be with you, you must let them go. And it's okay to maybe try now and again, but not every single day. And you shouldn't be like calling them all the time or anything like that, or going to the house. That's stalking. So trying your luck now and again is fair enough, but if someone says no, try and move on. I mean, that's something that has taken me ages. I mean, I will always probably have a soft spot for this person, because I can't help it. My heart, for some reason, it's like having a heart has got a mind of its own. But at the same time, I know where the clear boundaries are. If that person doesn't want to talk to me, that's cool. I'm going to get on with my life, do what I need to do, and I will end up dating. And that's the thing, it's like the problem is when you're dealing with someone who lives in fear, you can't plan ahead. You can't make consistent goals. You can't have a normal relationship, because it's constant sabotage. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. And I can't live my life being faithful to someone who cannot give me consistency and commitment back. Does that make sense? So it's really important for, if both people love each other, they both need to have that conversation and to be with each other. If they and make that commitment and be 100% in, because you can spend your whole life, you're going through different people, and and it's not fair, really. It's not fair. Say if you've still got feelings for someone, it's not fair on those other people that you're getting with, because you still are linked with someone else. Your heart is linked, but at the same time, once you make that decision, or if you don't want to be with that person, then you've got to sever that link, and you've got to say, right, regardless of my love and attachment to this person, which I probably will always have, I have to now think about me and bring that love for myself and move on if that person is not interested in me anymore. It's if you don't have communication and if you don't have a plan, things are never going to get resolved. It's always going to be up and down, because that person isn't resolving his fear issues. And for someone who is a consistent person and wants, I come from a family where longevity is like key, so I've always had long-term relationships, and the only time I've been single is because I was very traumatized when this person left me, and we weren't together, but there was something there between us whereby he was hitting on me a lot. And then I was having conversations with him, which I've got saved on my computer. But this is just an example of what up and down can look like. And that is to do with fear. If someone is hitting on you a lot and they're expressing how they feel about you through, their ways, then obviously that person has a thing for you. But if they're telling you face to face they don't want to be with you, then, that's fine. But you see, the problem lies when there's contradictions, and that's what I mean by hot and cold. It's like, I want this and I really need this, but at the same time I'm afraid of it, so I'm just going to sabotage it and come back, when I need this, and it's and it almost becomes like you become like a drug to someone. You're not getting what you need from that person. You're not getting the stability. You're not getting any of that. You're just becoming someone that person feels that they can go to whenever they feel like it, but have his cake and eat it. And the thing is, that works for him because, he gets to have his freedom and he gets to have you. And the problem with that is that you are pining. You're in love with this person, so seeing him get with other women, it's soul destroying for you, and he gets jealous if you're with other guys, and it's soul destroying for him, and I always know, because it's like if someone reacts in fight or flight at the time of when, say, you're talking to someone else, even though you're not together, that person has feelings for you, and that hasn't changed. So it's kind of like what people like this do when they're in fear. They cut off contact because they know that they're afraid of that person moving on, and they don't want to be in presence of that person. So that's the reason why they do it. And and so that's why, unless you deal with your fear, unless you have that conversation, unless you build up trust, you are always going to keep sabotaging love. And it's really important that, even if it's a phobia that you've got, sometimes a lot of it is about, taking that risk. And it's scary. It's really scary. Like, for example, I had to try and get over my fear of heights, and that was really scary, and and I got fear of the sex scenes and stuff, but a lot of it was, I was afraid of losing someone I loved to a sex scene, which is ridiculous, but your brain is irrational when you've gone through trauma, and that's why I don't hold it against people. That's why I can love even after. When I see sort of like flight or fight responses, I can still care about that person, even though I know that person right now needs to fix himself, for example. And it's the same with other people that I know as well. Some people do this with friendships. They sabotage the friendships because they're not used to having a loving environment. So what they do is they push those people away because they're afraid of getting close. And then they sabotage it, and because they've not known stability, So for me, when I make friends with someone, like for me, it's a long-term thing. I will be friends with you for a very long time, and I'll try my best to be a good friend. I'll always be there for my friends. I always cook for my friends. I've given them a place to crash. I've bought them food, alcohol. I've been a really cool friend, and I've even given friends somewhere to live, when they were homeless and stuff. And, I've never had the same treatment back, really. Only a few people have been sort of as kind. And you don't do things for it to be given back, but you do expect respect if you've helped a friend out, for example. And I think the problem that you've got is that, for me, I'm always going to be someone's friend unless that person, deceives me. Because when you've gone through trauma in the past, and when you've gone through difficult times, you'll just never accept bad treatment in the same way again. When someone's disrespecting you, ridiculing you, making you feel bad about yourself, then why would you have that person in your life? If they're publicly putting you down, and they have no consideration of how something may affect you, and they're backstabbing you, they're being nasty about you and stuff, they're lying to you. I've even had friends who have stole from me, and I made such bad choices of friends when I was younger because I didn't have that self-love, so I didn't have the boundaries there. And when you're older and you've been burned a few times by friends, so-called friends, your boundaries go up because you have to assess the people that are around you. Are they sticking up for you? Do they defend you? I mean, I understand if you're a mutual friend on something, I always tell people to stay out of it. But I'm talking about when somebody is a bully, or, would you be their friend? And, would you tell them that what they're doing is wrong? And through this experience that I've had recently with bullies and stuff, I've really got to know who my true friends are, and it's really made me wise up to the people that I really don't want to hang around with and the people that I really do, because I feel like, part of fear, right, and this is something that I kind of want to discuss, because there's healthy fear, which is stuff like if someone has proven that they're untrustworthy and they've done things, to hurt you, intentionally, publicly humiliate you, for example, then why would you want to be their friend? Now, I get it, for example, if say if someone's done some, say for example, let me give you an example. Someone, say, bullies me, so then I put a self-defense status up. I understand that. So if someone else has caused the drama or whatever, and you've defended yourself because untrue rumors are being spread about you, and there's been lies and things, then that's the reason why that you would put that up. So in that sense, yeah, I get it. But I don't understand people that bully online, cyberbullying, do it privately behind people's backs and then are nicest to their face. I don't understand that, I never will understand that, because that's not the kind of people I want to be around. And the problem is, you can get sucked into these kind of people because they love bringing people down. They love bitching. And it's like, that's not who I am, because I'm the kind of person that likes to build people, not break them. And that's having healthy self-esteem, it's having healthy confidence about me. I don't get jealous of people. I want them to do well, That's why I life coach. I want to work with the promoters, with the venues. But if you're humiliating me and you've proven that, then the fear that I would have towards that situation is perfectly acceptable, because I know that these people are not trustworthy and they're emotionally dangerous, so that's where the fear thing is okay to have. But say if you were having that fear towards everybody, then there would be a problem. Like say if you were having, I don't know, let me give you an example. Say if there was a really nice person that you've known all your life and everything, and then all of a sudden you're like, this person's going to hurt me and stuff, and that's a rational fear, and I go on how people behave towards me. I go on how they're acting towards me, how, are they jealous? Are they like caring? Do they go behind my back? Do they take the piss out of me? It's all about respect for me. I don't mind a bit of banter, but ultimately, you've got to have respect. And for me, the friends I have now respect me. Oh my God, I can't even explain to you the level of friendships that I've got now, and the quality of friendships that I have now. And I'm not dogging anyone in the past, because whatever we went through, it's a life lesson. We may at the time not have been good ourselves, so it's understanding that. So you might have been sabotaging it as well, who knows. What my point being is, fight or flight response is when it's when you're faced with a threat, or you feel like you're in danger. And the only way to remove that danger is to make sure that you're not around people that have proven that they're not trustworthy. And then secondly, make sure that you're not putting that fear on people who are actually okay. And I struggle with that sometimes because of the traumas that I've gone through, because one day you think everyone's cool and you're fine with everyone, and the next minute you're seeing comments on people that you trusted, dogging you, and you're like, where the hell has this come from? And people can be very sort of scrutinizing towards everything you do. It's almost like they're sitting there judging you on every single thing that you're doing. And it's quite sad, really, that people think like this, because most of them aren't perfect themselves. When you look at what they've done and the things that they've, what they've done and the things that they do. I could go through each single person and go through all the things they've done wrong, but I don't do that because I'm not a terrible person. I only do that in self-defense. So it's sort of understanding that there's healthy fears, and then there's irrational fears. So irrational fears are when you're punishing someone who doesn't deserve it, or you're trying to push someone away who only wants the best for you and loves you, for example. These are the things I'm talking about. So, I know so many of you that are so afraid of getting into relationships because of this trauma that you've had with previous relationships. But, you will get to a point where things stop hurting as much. There will be a point where, you start to love yourself a bit better. You take that love back for yourself, and you start to do things with your friends, with your family. You start to get better. You start to, you start thinking about everything that's happened, and you start to reflect. And, the problem with me is I'm one of these people that is a solution-based person. And that's very difficult when you're dealing with someone who doesn't deal with their issues and just pretends they don't happen. They haven't happened. Goes into denial and then goes into escapism, and that's really hard because there's not that truthful conversation happening. When someone is lying to themselves and other people, you won't get that closure. So you need to understand that not everyone is on your same wavelength. So even though you want something to work out, or say you want to have a living relationship with that person may not want it, and for whatever reason they put other people's opinions over how he feels. So you've got to then look at what is going to work for me. What are my needs and wants? What are the things that I want in a relationship. And, you know, and I want somebody who is going to be, you know, a long-term person. I don't go into relationships to just be with them for a few, you know, I want someone who's going to commit long-term and, you know, is going to, you know, be working. They've got a good sense of work ethic, because that's important to me. A lot of people say, oh, you know, well, you know, I've got my standards, and it's because I've been raised on work ethic. I've always done work, regardless how ill I've been. I've always done my band. I've done Ragebreed. I've done so many different things, even when I've been really poorly. You know, I've continued doing the things that I really love to do, because I know that that is what, you know, is the core of who I am. You know, I know who I am inside out, and I know what makes me happy. I've done all that soul searching stuff, and it's about finding what you love to do, you know, and finding the things that you want from life. And once you start that journey, you know, you start to think about, you know, what is it that I want. And you know, I do want longevity. I do want someone who's going to be like, I love you back. But you have to, when you've been through traumatic situations and people have rejected you or they've hurt you, you've learned that's love. So when people actually do care about you and love you, it's really weird. It's like, what? You're nice to me, why? And that's so sad that I've had to feel that way, because when you've been hurt so much by people, you know, when someone is really nice to you, you're like, well, this is really weird for me, you know. And it's because I've gone through so much shit with people, you know. And I don't know what it is like, which is really quite sad, actually. You know, I don't know what it is like to be with someone who will stay, you know, and actually wants to plan for the future. And I don't know what it's like to have a friend that doesn't bitch about me, which is really sad as well, because a lot of my female friends ended up getting with a guy that I love, and also, you know, even in the past, cheated on me. My best friend went with the guy that I was in love with and cheated on me. So I've gone through really difficult things, and what I've realized is that, you know, everyone makes mistakes, but it doesn't mean to say that, you know, you can forgive them, but it doesn't mean you go back with them. If you can rise above these things and you can work things out, brilliant, you know. But for me, as I'm aware in relationships, it's never going to go, you know, perfectly. And because I know that, and I understand that people are capable of mistakes, you know, I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of being in a long-term relationship anymore, because I know that it's going to happen. But the thing is, you say, it's about truth and honesty. So if you fuck up, tell each other. Don't base a relationship on lies. I hate lies. I hate it so much. Can't stand liars. It really bugs me, because I'm one of these people that I cannot help but tell the truth. It's just something I can't help doing, you know. And so when I'm in a relationship with someone, you know, I want to know that they're going to protect my heart, not break it. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people around in this day and age that want the same thing. But you can only truly get that if you are the person, if you become that person that you want to be. You've got to be that role model. You've got to be a person that wants that. And if you have these fight or flight issues, for example, acknowledge them and heal them, fix them, you know, try and get better with your anxiety. Do the guided meditation techniques, you know, go and see a doctor, go on medication, because, you know, I mean, my dad's a doctor and he tells me so many times he's made so many people with anxiety and depression better just by the meds, because it is a chemical imbalance, you know. But I would recommend also guided meditation. And for me personally, what works is to do, you know, combine the both. So, you know, have your meds, but also do the guided meditation, and also couple that with maybe counseling or psychotherapy. And that will help you, you know, try and fight this thing, because you aren't alone. there's so many people out there that have got it, and so many people have phobias, irrational phobias as well. But it's about communication. If you're afraid, say you're afraid. So I'm afraid of getting close. And listen, and really listen to the person, and just say, because the thing is, the only thing that I've ever really wanted is to be with one person that I love. That's it. That's all I really want. And the thing is, I still want to have my career, because that's who I am. So you have to understand that I am a public figure, and there are going to be people that, flirt with me and things like that. But you can't take that to heart, because the thing is, it's just being a public figure. You have that all the time, It doesn't mean to say that I'm getting with all these different people, because I'm not. I do have people that, I think that there are people that are interested in me, and I'm not going to go too much into that, because at the moment I'm in the crossroads of my life to make better decisions for myself, and making sure that I'm not going to end up alone all my life. And I know that I have recovery to do, but that's why I'm taking the steps necessary in order to get the healing. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because I know there's so many other people that have gone through traumas. I've gone through emotional and physical abuse, and it's something that I'm dealing with, and I'm getting everything that I need to do done, including a charity that's helping with victims of abuse and stuff. So I am having those sessions starting, I think it's in a few weeks' time. But that's just to give closure to that past. But my point being is that everyone has gone through something, and you're not alone. And I want people to understand that Ragebreed, My Body and Spirit is there to help people. We want people to speak up about the problems that they're having. We want people to acknowledge, if they have got problems, go to your GP, and a lot of people are worried about GPs and things like that. They're afraid, they have trust issues even with their doctors and stuff. But I'm telling you, these people are medically trained. They're people that have gone through university. They know the physiology of everything, even the drugs, all that. They know everything that will help you to get the chemicals right back into your body, whether it's, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and you will have to probably go through a few different types to get the right one for you, but once you do, you will see your life improving. And I can tell you that from first-hand experience, that couple that with some therapy, and you couple that with, eating right, making sure that you're being healthy, and just staying away from things that are toxic. So it's like I've had to do this kind of detox of my life, if you like. So basically, cold people who are not people that support you and put you down and continuously scrutinize you, they don't deserve to be in your life, because everyone makes mistakes. It's just life, But it's the problem that these people are is that they're like pedantic, petty, and they go through all these things. So make sure that you've got people that bring positive energy to you, and they tell you things, but in a tactful way, which is respectful. They're really cool people, because they're people that actually care about you. They want to see you rise. They want you to do well. So that's number one. Number two is, exercise and diet. And I know this sounds cliche, but actually when you're doing exercises, it releases endorphins, and that really helps with your depression, because when you're looking after your body, you get such great endorphins, and you feel so good about yourself because you're actively doing something to help your body, and if you put some time and effort into that, that's amazing. And then when it comes to like meditation, I mean, I've posted about guided meditation earlier, so do that 10 minutes a day, once in the morning. If you want, do it twice, do it once, in the evening as well before you go to bed. And you will find such a difference in your life. And I really do believe, eating right, making sure you've got good energy around you, supportive energy around you, meditate, and all these things are so important, and make sure that, you're doing things that you love to do. Do more of that, pamper yourself sometimes, have a hot bath, a bubble bath, but do things that are healthy for you, because once you have that level of self-care, your life will change, because it means that you're doing something to love your body, love your mind, love your spirit, and it will take you out of this kind of, self-sabotaging sink, where you're continuously doing that. And you will have days where, you think, I don't want to do this, and, you have a bad day. But if you do, just have that bad day, exercise it off tomorrow, and then continue with your routine. And that's how to do it, because we all have off days, but it's important to have that self-discipline to think, right, okay, I've eaten too much today, I've eaten crap, so tomorrow I'm going to do this, and I'm going to exercise a little bit more than I would do normally to keep my body back into that balance. And that is how you look after yourself. Couple that with your meds, your therapy, and all that kind of stuff, then slowly you will start to see results. And remember, don't be hard on yourself. If you truly are going through panic attacks and anxiety and depression and things like that, it's a hard thing to go through. It really, really is. But, if you have the right support network and you're trusting the right people, not the people that lie to you, but the people that will tell you straight. It might be hard to hear and it might be difficult, but they're the people to trust, the people that actually tell you straight and love you, that will tell you the truth. That's the people you want in your life, not people that are just going to dick you around all the time. It's knowing the difference between friends and mates and frenemies, and believe me, there's a lot of them on Facebook. So make sure that you've got a good positive circle around you, and know who the people in your life to trust and the people not to, because it's very important to have a healthy bonds in your life, and if people are doing things that you don't like, and say someone is mistreating you, put your boundaries up, talk to them, speak to them, and say, this is a problem that I've got. Be tactful and address the issue with that person. And I'm sure if you care enough about each other, it will get resolved. And that is truly the art of problem solving. Rather than getting afraid and sabotaging and then thinking the worst of that person and the situation, that's how you do it. And it's all about that. So I hope that this session of Ragebreed Mind, Body and Spirit has helped you in regards to anxieties and phobias, and especially when it comes to relationships, because I know that there's a few of you that probably could use this advice. So remember that once you face your fears and you discuss openly about your fears, you talk about your anxieties and you let that person know, that will build your bond, that will build trust up again, because that's how you do it. You take each step at a time, you build up the bond, you trust, you find that trust in each other, and then it can go into a more permanent state. But without having that discussion to know what each other want, you don't know. And a lot of people say, oh, go with the flow and all this sort of stuff. I said, well, yeah, to a certain degree, but you have to know what you want when you go into a relationship. If you want to go into a relationship, I go into relationships for long term. If you're going in for just, we'll see how it goes for a few months, and then you're going to move on to someone else, then be real with that person. Just say to them, I'm not ready for a proper commitment. I'm just ready for something like seeing you for a bit. And if you're openly honest with someone, then they can't get their hopes up and then be destroyed by the decisions that you make. So honesty is always the best policy. And I always say that because I'm recovering from things, and I'm kind of at the crossroads of my life now, because it's like I have offers, and I have this, and I still have this soft spot for someone who has hurt me, but I also know why it's happened. So it's down to that. But ultimately you have to think about what you want, and if it is long-term longevity that you want, then communicate that, and make sure that the other person wants the same thing. And if they don't, then you have to cut the cord and move on to someone who will give you what you need, and your heart will learn to love again. It will just the things that once you start to learn to love yourself and you're around people that love you back, you will never expect or accept anything less than that, because you know your worth. And it's really important to know what your worth is. You are deserving of a healthy relationship. You are deserving of success. You are deserving of doing the things that you want to do in life. You are deserving of all the things that you want to do. It's just that you have to believe that. So I'm hoping that this fear stuff, this irrational fear, will hopefully go once you understand the dynamics of what this is about, and learn to heal your traumas, and take the steps that you need in order to heal. Otherwise you're going to go on a loop of self-sabotage, and it's going to hurt yourself, and it's going to hurt all the people around you. So I hope that this has helped, and I really hope that you guys sort out any phobias that you might have and understand what's happening when you're going into fight or flight. Until next time, take it easy. This is Karina from Ragebreed.
Remember, your mind, your body, and your spirit are all connected. When you nurture each one, you create balance, strength, and resilience that no challenge can take away. Ragebreed is proof that even in the face of bullying, prejudice, and hardship, creativity and community will always shine through. So take a deep breath, honor yourself today, and know that you already have what it takes to thrive. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and keep your mind, body, and spirit in harmony.